I think most agnostics and atheists have a hard time grasping Christianity because of the way it presents the origins of the world. The one thing that a lot of atheists I hear, or agnostics, they usually say is, that it kind of goes against what we've always been taught in schools and whatnot, which is, well, you have the Big Bang, you have all this time periods of evolution and whatnot. And the thing that almost all these atheists, they really have a hard time grasping initially is, what is God? What is actually God? Not just in, of course, the religious sense, but like in the more physical sense. And part of the reason why they end up getting kind of lost and frustrated is that they don't understand what the divine nature is. They have a hard time trying to insert reality and the things that we take for granted in reality to God, who is not of this world, is divine. And so in order to actually answer the question about creation, we need to really look into what actually is divine nature. And so that's kind of the first thing I want to talk about today is, what is divine nature and how does that apply to our understanding of the origins of the world? So what do you think the divine nature is?
So from a spiritual point of view, there are two natures. There's a human nature, which we already know, all of us. That's us, and everything what we have on this earth and everything, outside even, outside of this earth, what we understand, and we can kind of apply our human metrics to it. And then divine nature, that it's outside of this world, outside of our understanding, something which our human measurements, our metrics, our physical measurements don't apply to. And that what is, that's the God, the angels, and so on. Something which can maybe somehow can be explained a little bit in theory, but we will never be able to completely grasp the understanding in its complexity and in its fullness and to the detail. We just don't have the capacity. Does that answer the question?
Right. Mm-hmm. It does, yeah. That is, because again, the thing is that the world that we live in, right, was something that God created. So everything that we almost like build our entire viewpoint of the world on, things like time, space, the fact that everything has a lifespan or life cycle, right, of birth, life, maturity, and eventual death, right, that all things must come to an end. All of these things are things that God created as part of this world. It's not just, the planets and the seas and the animals, everything, right? Even the most fundamental constructs and definitions of this world that we live in is something that God created.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of think the one, I'm going to kind of give a really quick analogy here that I was actually told by a priest that I feel kind of is a really good way of explaining things. Imagine you're a book author, right? So you're writing a fictional story. So you're breathing life into all these different characters, the setting, this world, this plot. And then imagine you are now in the shoes of one of those characters you just wrote about. Do those characters know that they're in a book? Do they know who you are as an author? Do they understand that world our world outside of the world that was created for them? And the answer is no, right? They only know the construct and this reality that was built for them. And so any attempt in trying to learn anything outside of that is not only difficult, it's basically impossible, right? It's a fool's game to try to actually learn anything outside of it. And that's the problem that a lot of atheists and agnostics have a hard time grasping, is of course we're naturally curious, right? And we want to know the answer to everything. And this is one of those things that we just never will have an answer to because it's outside of our capability, possibility even, to actually know and understand these things.
Yeah, I think that,
So
the people getting a little bit also, that's pretty nice, what you said, pretty correct. Additionally with that, for us human beings, we always want to know everything, right? And that portion from the Old Testament when it says that God created a man in an image of himself or in a likeness of himself makes a lot of people, if not the majority of the people, to think like, well, so we are kind of like a God, so God is kind of like us, right? So therefore we should be able to explain the God. And that's not what actually it means, that passage from the Old Testament, from the Genesis. It means our soul, right? The spiritual part is created in likeness of God. Not our body, not our brain, not our, the way we think on the earth, none of those things. The spiritual part. So trying to kind of like, well, we already got it. God looks like kind of like us because we were created in His image. It's very incorrect. It's a spiritual part, right?
Well, also the fact that nobody's actually seen God. Even in the Bible, it's not even mentioned that anybody's actually seen God. So
yeah, and we saw
physical presence.
We saw the God, well, not you and me, but people before us, Jesus Christ, for example. But that's why Jesus Christ took on himself the human nature.
Right.
He had, this divine nature, unlike us, but he took upon himself the human nature, meaning the body, like we have, with all deficiencies and so on. And but that didn't make him just a simple man. That didn't make Jesus Christ just a simple teacher or spiritual guide in this world. He was still the God because he still retained both natures.
Right. And of course, to build off of that, right, when he was crucified, right, he lost that human nature, but of course he still kept the divine nature.
Yep.
And of course we could go on about all the different things that happened with the crucifixion. The fact that the gates of heaven were basically open for everybody else, right? He opened it, and so all those souls that were waiting, they were finally able to actually go, to heaven after Jesus. But the one thing, just to kind of clarify, you mentioned that our souls are made in the image and likeness of God. Divine nature in our souls, is that something that we have all the time, or is it something that we maybe lose access to at some point?
The divine nature of the soul is only when that soul is clean. What does it mean? That means when it's actually in a state of grace, without any mortal sin on it. So therefore, when people, which all of us we do, commit mortal sin, most of us on a daily basis, then no, that soul is not of the divine nature. And therefore, that is the reason why Jesus Christ, he actually set up the way how to keep, our soul clean, which is when we commit the mortal sin, we have the sacrament of penance, or say confession, and then we have sacrament of communion, which means the body and the blood of Jesus Christ. And that's how we can we are able as a humans to keep our soul clean, keep it in a state of grace. Because for us human beings, just because we have this fallen nature in us since Adam and Eve, we always going to be tempted to do wrong things. Therefore, I would say it's almost impossible. I don't know if it was, except a few people, like Blessed Mother Virgin Mary, there wasn't really anybody who was living without any single sin entire life. Maybe there was, but except Blessed Mother, I do not know about anybody else. And again, I cannot count Jesus Christ because he was of divine nature completely. So, yeah,
So
that is the only way. Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna move on to the next question that I want to talk about, which is knowing all of the details about creation, not specifically about like divine nature, but knowing all the details about creation, as sort of mentioned as described in Genesis, is that important for the day-to-day task of living as a Christian?
Is it important? What is your question?
Yeah, is it important to know in order to live a Christian life, to know about creation, all the details about it?
Only what we need to know, what is in the Testament. Now, some people, they're asking for more, they want all the details, but if God himself, the God the Father, wanted to know us to know all the details, he would reveal to us. Or even, further than that, if he somehow changed his mind, and when Jesus Christ, his God's divine Son was sent on the earth to teach the people, then Jesus Christ would teach about it. But that didn't happen, right? And even Jesus Christ himself said that what is in the Old Testament, everything is truth. And he didn't come to change not a single word in the Old Testament, in all teachings. So therefore, what is there, that is complete for us. We don't need anything more. And also, on the other side, nothing is there false. So even though it seems kind of, like a fairy tale story, some of the portions of the Old Testament, that's how it was. And it's exactly correct. Now, obviously, there are not all the details were provided to us. And could be possibly because we just don't have the capability to understand all the details. Just like a small toddler, even the smartest one, even the smartest toddler will not be able to grasp the understanding of the nuclear power plant or all these scientific things, because it's just a way beyond, right, of the small kid's brain. And therefore the same thing is for us, and infinitely more actually, because we are nothing compared with God. So even if we would, the understanding all the details would be revealed to us, we still wouldn't understand it, right? So, and that therefore, no, we don't need to know it. Everything what we need to know was provided to us, and we have to have that faith in our hearts, in our souls, strong enough to trust God that this is enough. And really, honestly, when you think about it, that would that somehow improve our lives, make us better people? If we would know all those details, it wouldn't change anything, right?
No.
Yeah, exactly. So it seems almost like the people who try to figure out all those details, I think their primary goal is more, they want to kind of deny the God existence. Kind of like, well, hey, see, this is kind of everything, it's silly, this is impossible. This whole faith is just a fake. It's not the true thing. And everybody who believes in God is just either naive or complete, or even more completely crazy.
Right. They
Yeah.
rather than actually looking at the things that are mentioned in the New Testament and actually learning about the ways of actually living a Christian life, they're so focused, so tunnel visioned
Mm-hmm.
on creation that it's almost like they don't even want to look past it. Like it's like, oh no, I'm gonna get to the bottom of this. They'll probably say, I'm gonna get to the bottom of this, and I'm gonna try to look at Christianity from its perspective on creation, and they see all these things that of course we can't fully answer because, as you mentioned, we don't have all the details of, and again, we can't get those details because we'll never be able to understand it. And they're going to be like, well, see, this goes against, our way of, the secular view of thinking. And therefore, everything has got to be wrong because of this. And,
Mm-hmm. When you really think
they
about
can't
it,
look past it.
when you really think about it, it actually this kind of behavior, it has a consequences.
Mm-hmm.
So we, human beings, when we start, focusing on the things which we're not supposed to, takes our attention from important things which we're supposed to focus on, which is our present life here on the earth, right? The way we live. That's actually what God wants us to do. Focus on our lives, how we live it, and fix it, right? Remedy it, because, again, we are very sinful people. But instead our focus is diverted to something which not supposed to be. And it's almost makes me think that this is the devil's temptation. Just like, in the Old Testament, in Genesis, when devil was tempting Eve, telling her, hey, eat that fruit, eat that apple, because that's the fruit from the tree of knowledge, and you will know everything, right? Same thing is today. Something tempting us, and again, most probably is the devil, tempting us with hey, come on, you want to know all those things. You need to know all these things. It's very, very important for you. See how similar it is? And
right.
how did it work for Eve and then Adam? It was a cause of their fall. It was the reason why they were, banned from paradise, right? Forever.
Right.
It was fall which not only they, two of them, paid for, but the rest of us after that.
Right. Original sin. Yeah.
Original sin, which was only removed by the death of Jesus Christ. So, why do we continue in this kind of behavior? No, again, because we are tempted. Well, who can only tempt us in this world spiritually is the devil. So, it doesn't have the good end. Either we find the answer or not. It doesn't have any consequence for our lives here on the earth. We should instead focus on what is important. We know everything what we need to know about the Old Testament. Everything what we need to know was revealed to us. And what we do not need to know was not revealed to us because, and again, has no purpose for our present lives. There is enough work on a table right now what we should be focusing on and kind of, trying to divert our attention is wrong, or even maybe even rightly sinful in itself. It's kind of like you are a construction place, right? And you are a carpenter. And your job is to build the frame of the house. And you will be like, well, you know what? I wanna do something different. I'm gonna go, and work, with the plumbers or work with electricians. Well, but that's not your job. That's why you were put here. You were put here as a carpenter. Do your job. Oh, no, I'm gonna do something different. And that's kind of just similar to this one. Not only we focusing, are we not supposed to focus because, again, we don't have the capability to understand it, but we're also neglecting what we're supposed to do.
Right.
Focus on our lives, our present lives here, because our lives are very, very short. We got only so many years here on the earth, and after that is the end. It's not like a video game when you can restart. There is no restart at the end. There is a death, and there is a final judgment. So our job is to use the time available to the best we can. But the question is, are we doing that?
Yeah, I would say most people, no.
No.
Well,
And again, since one more thing, since we have still a bit of time, we talked about the original sin. Okay, this is very important for people to understand. Jesus Christ's death is a willing death, because again, he could stop it any time, but he willingly died for us. Didn't remove our sins forever. So now we can do whatever we want to do because, hey, we are saved. That is very, very incorrect.
right.
It's a very, very cartoonish version of the faith, and it's not going to bring us to the heaven. Jesus Christ's death only, and the only thing what it did was remove the original sin, the sin of Adam and Eve, which shut the doors to the heaven for us, right? So after Jesus' death, those doors are open. But his death didn't remove our actual sin, the actual sin which we commit every single day, right? That we have to work on. And that's why we have the sacraments provided, again, by Jesus Christ, to keep our souls as clean as possible. We have the tools, the sacrament of penance, the sacrament of communion, you get the final sacraments, and so on, so on. So that's the tools we have to, not we can, we have to utilize if one day, after the final judgment, upon our death, want to be with God in heaven. Because just the person is baptized, it doesn't mean that that person will go automatically to the heaven. He will still go to the hell if that person, willingly lives or lived a sinful life.
In fact, actually, with baptism, not only does it not save you, you actually have now even more of a responsibility.
Yes, because for the sinful behavior, or for the sin, because for something to be considered sin, it has to be willingly done of the free own will, and has to have the knowledge of the sin. That person has to have knowledge that this is a sinful. And that is one of the things a few times people, they ask me also, what about, the native people, in America or, Africa, who never heard about, Christianity, when they die, how are they going to be judged? Well, did they know that they were sinning? Did they receive all the information? Did they receive the education, the Christian education about,
No, of course not.
The catechism, the theology, and so on? So they didn't know they sinned. So therefore, they're not going to be judged for those things. Because again, in order for us to be judged for a particular wrong thing which we do, we have to actually do it on our own free will, and we have to actually know it's sinful. So therefore, people who are baptized, they better be really, really ready to answer some of the questions, all of us, because yes, we know very well, all of us, who are baptized, that what's wrong and what's right. And God's going to ask us, and we're going to be judged for it.
I think I'll have to wrap it up right there. So that'll be it for this week. In the next episode, we'll talk about the misconception of allowing wrongdoings in the name of achieving a common goal. If you have any questions, feel free to send them to us, as we may answer them in a future episode. We'd appreciate it if you could follow us on all social media. And until next week, thanks for listening, take care, and God bless.
Godspeed.